All right, we will get started. Thank you for joining, everybody. Know it takes some time out of your day, so we appreciate the effort here. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. So this is WireMock Live. It's something we do about every month or so. We go over either new capabilities in WireMock Cloud or different ways to use WireMock Cloud, or things we would like to share with you that you might not be aware of inside of WireMock Cloud. So you can always subscribe for the next one as well. We'll send the recording out after the call if you want to share it with your team internally. At the end, we'll take questions. The questions can be about the topic today, but they don't have to be. They can be about anything WireMock Cloud related while we're here. So don't hesitate to ask anything that might be coming to mind. I work on product here at WireMock, and Dan, who's going to lead the session, is the head of customer success. And today we're going to be talking about some cool updates we've got in regards to first, our entire new documentation portal, which we're pretty proud of. And second, and most importantly, something we've wanted for a very long time, our powerful new public APIs and the portal around using them. So now everything that can be done in WireMock Cloud can be done fully programmatically end to end. And that was always the case to a degree. So we had APIs before, if you've been around for a while, but we finally got them in a nice, standardized, and easy to consume way. We'll have a much better experience using APIs to integrate WireMock Cloud into your services and your products. We'll also talk a little bit about some changes we've made recently to how external test data sources work in the product. So you can go ahead and drop questions in the Q&A box down there. The chat won't work, but if you drop them in Q&A, I will make sure to read them out at the end. And with that being said, we'll toss it over to Dan and we can get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Ethan. Get my video turned on here. Well, welcome everybody. Let me get my screen shared and we'll hop into the call today. We'll start our journey today, our discussion on the documentation site update. So I've got that loaded up on the screen here for us all, and you'll notice it still lives at docs.wiremock.io, but we now have a much more modern look and feel to documentation. You'll still find the majority of documentation is still categorized in the same form and fashion as it was in the old version. But the most powerful update that you'll find in working with the documentation comes in the search bar. So as you can see, instead of just a plain old search bar at this point, we have a search or ask bar, which means our documentation is now backed by AI. So this means that we can start to ask questions like, how do I generate a random string? And of course, we'll have our topics down below, but we can click on the AI generated answer and allow the AI capabilities to give us some more insightful capabilities and insights to the question that we're asking. So here we can see not just the plain old documentation page, but it may be a accumulation of multiple pages to derive this answer from the AI engine here. Some other interesting ones might be if you're looking to maybe generate a username is a common question. So we could see we have the example here that it's giving us saying we can generate a Twitter-like username. We might be able to do the same thing using the random value handlebar helper coming down in other ways as well, other recommendations from the engine, the AI engine here. Maybe you're working with dynamic state and you're curious, how do I reset the state? We can, put in reset state here. We can get, again, the AI answer, or maybe we want to programmatically reset the state. This is pointing to one of those newer APIs that we've published here recently that we'll go over in a little bit. We've gotten some tremendous feedback already on this relatively new capability with the AI search. I just wanted to share that with everyone here real briefly. I'll read this out loud. I wanted to share some fantastic feedback about the AI search functionality. It is incredible. Our team has been extensively testing it over the past few days, specifically working with stateful mocks and multiple context variables. The search feature has significantly improved our workflow and ability to develop features using WireMock. So some awesome feedback there from one of our customers. Hopefully, as you start to utilize these new capabilities with the AI engine behind the documentation, you'll be able to find the answers that you need much more rapidly than you did before. Now, you'll also find inside of our documentation is our new API reference located up here in the top left. And when you pull this up, you'll see a fresh, new, modern look and feel to the APIs, along with many new APIs for you to interact with. So first and foremost one here that we're seeing is the user API. Some other notable ones to point out is team membership and management APIs, as well as organization management APIs are now all publicly documented for you. We have a security API for rolling over your API token in case you want to do that programmatically. Coming down into data sources, some often requested APIs around managing data sources are here for you to start to play around with and use. Also, we have down here a little bit more in managing state, right, with the API. Some open API specific APIs are available now. And a couple of key things I want to point out to you as you explore this new documentation and maybe even practice using it, using the built-in sandbox here, is first and foremost, you'll notice there is a little drop down here. It can be a little bit difficult to see as we have our authorization drop down here. It's currently populated with my API token, so I won't expand that for us right now. But I want you to notice that there is a little drop down box here. Your documentation website will default to this wmc.wiremock.api.cloud fully qualified domain name. And you'll see that replicated over here in the example code as you look at that. So if we were to go ahead and send this transaction, right, this request to the API, we'll get an answer back right now. Now, remember I told you my authorization token is currently hidden underneath this little box here. Well, my email address certainly isn't docs@example.com. It's dan@wiremock.io. So the number one thing to recognize is by default, you are going against a mock API that is a pseudo replacement for the real API endpoint. We've done this on purpose so that you don't mistakenly do anything to your account while you're using the practice calls in here. We don't want you to make destructive calls accidentally against your own account. So you are by default going against a mock API. So do not expect the answers to be what you'd expect inside of your own account. That's because you're getting stubbed responses. If you want to go ahead and start to send transactions, these requests to the real API, you can utilize this little drop down here to switch over to the live API endpoint for WireMock Cloud, which, as many of you know, is api.wiremock.cloud. You'll see that's also updated our example documentation over here. We will be adding, some type of banner or call out to this so that you are aware that this is the default behavior, that you are going against a mock API representation of the APIs and not against the real APIs when you are playing in the sandbox here of WireMock Cloud. So that is missing right now, but we will be adding that as Ethan and I have just had a chat about that a few minutes ago. Another interesting thing to point out to you is if we were to come down to our stub mappings here, and we take a look at one of these stub mappings, I want you to notice the path of these APIs. For many of you that have been using the APIs for a while, you might recall that when you were making calls against an existing mock API, you were typically using an __admin style of path that went against the mock API's fully qualified domain name. The new approach that we are hoping all of our customers switch over to is actually going through the real API endpoint. Again, that is the api.wiremock.cloud endpoint. in which case you will now specify the mock API ID inside of the path. So this is a fundamental change to the way that we interact with existing mock APIs. We no longer want to be using the underscore admin style of API, and instead switch to going to the main API endpoint and specifying the mock API ID inside of the path of the API request. Now, lastly, before we get to any questions that might have been asked, I want to cover off on one change that's been made, came as a package deal with these new APIs that we've introduced, and that lives inside of the data sources. We've had a few customers reach out to us via our Slack channels, our Teams channels, as well as inside of our support chat down here, which we love the feedback and the questions. Please keep it coming. When you come into data sources and you click into an existing data source, you'll notice that now down at the bottom, you'll see that the data shown is a preview. It is the
I
first
think
10 rows from your data source.
your screen, Dan, I think isn't sharing.
Interesting.
Oh, you know what? It is. I apologize, everybody.
Okay. IT, right? Something always happens. So looking at this data source, as I was just saying, you'll notice at the bottom that the change here is that we are no longer dumping the entire set of data inside of the CSV data source. Instead, you will be seeing the first 10 rows as a preview. This also works the same inside of the API calls to retrieve, data source information, where you'll have pagination in effect, where the default is 10 rows being returned. Now, because this has introduced, some feedback from our customers and saying, well, I need to be able to see all the data that I have inside of the CSV file, and I don't want to have to make 10, 15, 100 API calls to dump 10,000 rows. We've given the capability to go ahead and download the full CSV file via this download link below. So this is a fundamental change. Your data has not disappeared. It is still there in its full glory from what you uploaded. We're simply just displaying the first 10 rows during this preview session when we click on the data source in the UI here. Now, I will mention one more thing, maybe two more things before I ask questions. You will find a data sources section inside of the documentation here, and quickly followed up by that will be something called database connections. So this is something that we have been working on behind the scenes for a little bit for a few customers who have requested the capability to extend data sources from just being CSV to being able to connect to real ANSI SQL databases. Now, there is some requirements around here, initial requirements for the initial releases on this. If this is something that you feel would be valuable to your use as an enterprise customer, please reach out to us either via support or to myself or to your account executive, and let us know that this is something of interest to you. It might solve a problem that CSV only usage has introduced for you. And we can have a further discussion on what exactly these database connections are and the requirements around being able to enable that for you as an enterprise customer. The last thing I will bring up before seeing if there's any questions is we've offered to all of our customers, enterprise customers, the capability to set up a shared Slack channel with members over here at WireMock Cloud to facilitate even faster feedback and ongoing communication outside of the typical intercom support chat bubble here. We're also introducing this capability for Microsoft Team users at this time. So if you are not a Slack user group, and you use Teams internally, and your IT department allows you to set up external communication channels with external teams, users, and organizations. Again, please reach out to us. We'd love to have that ongoing, quick communication path via Microsoft Teams if that is of value to you and your teams. Not to be redundant there with the number of times I've said Teams. All right, with that, Ethan, I'll punt it over to you and see if we got any questions based on the materials we've covered today.
Yep, we do have a few questions. And first, let me apologize again for interrupting your flow. It is a classic case of a UI update in the software that I didn't understand. Um, Let me build off of what you said too with the Slack community. So we do have these Slack support communities if you're a paid customer. If you're not, I also want to throw a reminder out there that you can go to the wiremock.org open source site. There is a Slack community there as well. In the open source Slack community, we do have a WireMock Cloud channel. You're always welcome to join that. We monitor that just as closely as we would getting support on the commercial side. So however you want to get support, however you want to reach out. And I know a lot of times companies say we have these free Slack communities for support, and you get used to not expecting much from them, but we definitely do monitor it. So don't hesitate to get in there, ask questions, and reach out. Uh, Now, switching gears to questions on that last bit, our first question on the database related data sources that you mentioned, which we're all pretty excited about. Do you know what databases, this is one of the questions we got, what databases that supports as of day one? Because you did refer to some limitations.
Yeah, so I know, majority of our testing has been going against Postgres databases, but the idea is to be able to support any ANSI SQL style of database. So you can think of your classic databases, right? Like MS SQL, SQL Server, Postgres style of databases. These are your traditionally your relational style of databases that we're looking at. Some other, requirements, right, is typically we're looking at, we would need to establish a communication path between your WireMock cloud infrastructure and where your database is actually hosted. And because we run inside of AWS, WireMock Cloud is hosted inside of AWS, we are, giving priority to other Amazon customers that have their databases living in Amazon today. And the go forward path for right now would be VPC pairing to establish that. So as you can imagine, there's a little bit of technical configuration and maybe security hurdles to establish that connectivity, VPC pairing across two different AWS accounts. That's why this is a conversation that we'd like to have with customers that feel there would be value here so we can fully understand what value they feel they would have and if they meet these near-term requirements. And if not, can we look to expand the level of support that we have for database-backed data sources? Hopefully that
Yep,
answers the question.
I'm glad you said that, Dan, right? Because we do like to work very closely as partners with all of our customers and users. So on this feature and on any other feature, if you're using it and it's getting you 80% of the way there, or you could imagine different ways you'd want it to work or things you'd want out of it, that is stuff we would love to hear about, chat with you about, see how we could prioritize. Most of what we end up building is hand in hand with people we have using the product today. Um, and on the database question, I do know we've done testing with MySQL, Postgres, Oracle, and Microsoft SQL so far. Like you said, the scope should ultimately support larger than that for our own internal testing. Those are the ones we've validated to date. Um, on the API user or the API new API portal we've released, can you talk a little bit about how I might integrate that into things like user management on my side or how it might dovetail with SSO platforms I've got configured, like onboarding, offboarding users and things like that?
Yeah, sure, certainly. So, today the WireMox Cloud single sign-on integration with IDPs does support auto provisioning, meaning If the user has been granted access inside of their Okta or Azure AD, and their account does not yet exist inside of WireMock Cloud, an admin does not need to invite the user per se inside of the WireMock Cloud platform. It will be auto-provisioned because we assume that granting the permission inside of the IDP to the WireMock Cloud application should auto-provision that user into WireMock Cloud. So that's the way it works today. Now, when a user is removed, right, from the IDP access group that has been granted access to WireMock Cloud, that user still remains inside of WireMock Cloud. It's not automatically deleted. So we do have customers that have found ways to automate the deprovisioning of a WireMock Cloud user when their rights have been removed inside of the IDP. Now, selfishly, I would love to see WireMock Cloud have full SCIM provisioning capabilities in the future. So that's something I will continue to advocate for. For those of you unfamiliar with SCIM provisioning, that is a constant negotiation or checks and balances between who has the rights in your IDP and who has the rights in the SaaS platform. So that's something that I would love to see us implement in the future. But for now, with all of these APIs that we showed today, this can be achieved programmatically using webhooks from your IDP platform to deprovision users, or even running some simple cron job style of scripts to implement a similar capability.
It looks like that is all the questions we have today. We're excited to have y'all get in there and start using the new APIs and also using that new AI feature in the documentation portal. We are seeing increasingly that people are just going to the docs portal, typing the question in the form of a prompt, not a doc search, but an AI prompt, and they're getting back what they need to make progress on WireMock really fast. So we'd love to see if that's the experience for you. For future WireMock clouds, if you have any ideas of what you'd like us to cover, any topics, any workflows, we're happy to do that. So feel free to reach out. Our emails are ethan@wiremock.io and dan@wiremock.io. And if there's no other questions, we will wrap it here. And we'll see you all in about a month, and we will get you this recording for reference pretty quickly. Have a
Okay.
great day.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays and Happy New Year.